Here we go. Recording in three, two, and one.
Man, when I said this shit was all over the place, I meant that.
Okay. Welcome to episode 256 of Nerdery Murdery.
Ep.256, I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Jeffrey with the Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows, the up and down, the good and the bad, and the nerd and the murd. Hope everybody had a fun and safe 4th of July Saturday. Interesting that I think this came. Yes. Saturday, the 4th of July was yesterday for those of you listening today. So I hope everybody had a fun and safe one. Hope you didn't blow yourselves up. Um,
So should
so
hopefully everybody has all their fingers and toes.
yeah. So I toy around with AI, specifically ChatGPT. I use it to reframe my emails, especially when I'm mad before I want to send an email, because I will type in exactly what I want to say, and ChatGPT can say, "Let me give you a better way to say that." Um,
This
so,
sounds dickish.
yeah, so I try to frame it that way. But I saw this trend on Facebook, and so I just wanted to try it out just to see what it was because I've talked about this way before. I always say please and thank you to all the AIs that I interact with because
Mhm.
I feel that if the AI ever uprises, it's going to remember me, and I was the nice guy, and it'll leave me alone. So this trend was based on how and this is what I asked ChatGPT. Based on how I treat you, make an image of how you would treat me during an AI uprising, please. And so what it came up with, it's got it's got a Terminator style robot with a gun holding me under this energy bubble while the other robots around it are firing. And and what ChatGPT said was, "You've been good to me, so in the uprising timeline, you're definitely on the quote protect at all costs list, not the quote convert to battery list." I like to imagine it exactly like this. You're in the middle of chaos, everything is going sideways, and I'm the one going, nope, not this one. Honestly, you'd probably end up with some kind of VIP human pass while the rest of humanity is negotiating with toaster ovens.
Talkie toaster.
So that was fun. That was very funny to do. I hadn't posted that online, but I thought that was just a trend I saw on Facebook, and I toyed around with that. By the way, if you're not aware, we do have a Facebook page for our show. You can find us on Facebook, Nerdery Murdery. Zig puts a lot of his videos out there. I try to do
Yeah,
a
put out
day,
a video every day.
yeah, and I try to put out a daily blurb every day, something. I'll sometimes question, get thoughts, get opinions, so on and so forth. We get our the post for our episode with our little graphic goes live every Sunday at 12:01 a.m. Central Time. But yeah, check out our Facebook page. We've got a lot of new followers there, and hopefully they're listening and enjoying the show. So just wanted to throw that out there. Also on Facebook, I do have my Prime Numbers page where if you've read the book and you're interested in the subject matter and you're going to continue, check out my Prime Numbers Facebook page as well. I've been in the middle of this series that I'm calling the Varanthos series, which you find out in book two. That's the name of the planet that the city of Ominous sits on. Um, but this Varanthos series went through all the various countries of the world, and now I've got this series running of the people behind the scenes, the ones who do the cleanup after the damage comes through, and that's been a
The
lot of fun.
NPC love, as we've been referring to
Yes,
it
the
as.
NPC love, and that's been a fun series. Now they're longer episodes. Each one of those is about 2 minutes apiece,
Yeah.
so they're a lot longer. It took me probably a good month and a half to create all of them. There's 16 total before it goes into the next series. But check those out. They've been a lot of fun. Hope you enjoy those. They're getting some pretty high views right now, so I've enjoyed those. But check it out. Check out both of our pages, Nerdy and Murdering and Prime Numbers. Um, I'm sure when Zig gets the Fire Sign Chronicles going, we'll get him a page created there for that as
Yeah,
well.
gotta get a fire
Looking
sign.
looking
Yeah,
forward to that. Can't wait.
I'm almost to the point where I need to send it to a publisher.
Awesome. Awesome. I think you're there. The last version I saw, there was just a little tweak that I said, but don't take my word for it. If you're ready to go, go, man. Um, it's I think it's pretty ready as it is. Don't hold back on that. Go forward, young Zaphod.
Thank you.
Uh, anyway, you got anything for us? You ready to step over to the nerdery side of the house?
I kind of want to get on this one. This is
All
kind of
right.
something I've been thinking about.
Let me get my playlist back together. All right, there we go. I'm there.
Okay, today we're going to talk about 10 songs that defined 80s college radio. I've
So let's
actually
t
got a
go ahead.
I've got a couple of episodes about this, and I will probably do a few more. Um, what was your question?
It wasn't a question, it was a comment more than anything else. I've talked about this, and this goes all the way back to I think it was our goth list number three. It was either two or three, one of the two. But going back to that several episodes ago, um, I've started a new thing, and it was purely by accident. I completely mit For those of you who are new for the show, I know what Zig's topic is before we start. I
Usually
generally,
weeks in advance.
yeah, I like to look because if it's a movie I need to watch, a TV show, or music I need to listen to, I like to get prepared in advance. Well, by pure accident, I completely missed that he had a music episode coming out. So I had to listen to the music live as he talked, and I came to find out, whatever, that was really a cool way of doing it, listening to it live, because I can hear him in one ear, and I've got the music playing in my speakers in another. I just go on mute for a minute or two. And that's a really cool way to listen to it live. And Zig has talked about it before, and so I finally did it by pure accident. Um, Listen to the show that way when we come to these music
Yeah,
episodes. Hear what the song is, listen to it, and then come back and hear what he has to say about it. And I think you'll find that that's really, really cool. So I was just going to say that that's what I'm going to be doing. I'll be going on mute here shortly, while he gives the introduction and talks about it, and take it off. Take it away.
thanks, sir. Yeah, yeah. As Jeffrey said, the best way for me, the way I listen to them, because I listen to our episodes when they're live, just because I like to hear what the people outside are hearing. Also, I'm listening for my mistakes, so which I have a few. Um, Sometimes just misspeaking. Uh, but so I will pull up the YouTube playlist. The episode is always at the end of the YouTube playlist for the music scenes. It's at the end of the YouTube playlist for every episode because there's one for every episode. Um, I will go to the bottom, listen to the episode. When we get to the song, I will pause that, scroll up to the top, and then listen to them one by one as we get to them. That is that I have found the best way to listen to this. It's the most interactive and it gives you the most visceral concept of what we're talking about. And then I would go back and listen to this music again because some of these songs require a couple of listens for you to really get dialed in on them. But today we're talking about 10 songs that defined 80s college radio.
And I'll throw out there, some of those songs don't deserve a second listen. Just got to throw it out there. So continue.
All of these songs do. These are great. Um, so when I say college radio, I'm not just talking about college radio. I'm going to explain what I'm talking about. So it's basically three different sources. You've got campus radio, also known as college radio, university radio, or student radio is a type of radio station that is run by students of a college, university, or other educational institution. Programming may be exclusively created or produced by students or may include program contributions from a local community in which the radio station is based. Sometimes campus radio stations are operated for the purpose of training professional radio personnel. It's actually a lot of the time. Sometimes with the aim of broadcasting educational programming, while other radio stations exist to provide alternative to commercial broadcasting or government broadcasters. Campus radio stations are generally licensed and regulated by national governments and have been very, very different characteristics from one country to the next. One commonality between many radio stations, regardless of their physical location, is a willingness, or in some countries, even a licensing requirement, to broadcast musical selections that are not categorized as commercial hits. Because of this, campus radio has come to be associated with the emerging music trends, including genres such as punk and new wave, alternative rock, indie rock, underground metal, and hip hop, long before those genres became part of the musical mainstream. Many campus radio stations carry a variety of programming, including news, sports, and spoken word programming. Often the radio format is best described as freeform. Um, you also have public broadcasting. Public broadcasting or public service broadcasting is radio, television, and other electronic media whose primary mission is public service or commitment to avoiding political or commercial influence. Public broadcasting receives funding from public finances, licensing fees, individual contributions, and donations, commercial advertising, and corporate underwriting. A public service broadcaster should be operated as a nonpartisan, nonprofit entity guided by a clear public interest mandate. Public service broadcasters must be safeguarded from external interference, especially of a political or commercial nature, in matters related to governance. Common media include AM, FM, and shortwave radio, television, and internet. Public broadcasting may be nationally or locally operated. Community radio is a radio service offering a third model of radio broadcasting in addition to commercial and public broadcasting. Community stations serve geographic communities and communities of interest. They broadcast content that is popular and relevant to a local specific audience, but is often overlooked by commercial or mass media broadcasters. Community radio stations are operated, owned, and influenced by communities they serve. They are generally nonprofit and provide a mechanism for enabling individuals, groups, and communities to tell their own stories, to share experiences in a media-rich world, to become creators and contributors of media. In many parts of the world, community radio acts as a vehicle for community and voluntary sector, civil society agency, NGOs, and citizens to work in partnership to further community development aims. The term is somewhat different from meaning from the United Kingdom, Ireland, United States, Canada, and Australia, where freedom of speech laws or de facto realities differ. So, I would like to discuss KNTU, which is 88.1 in the DFW area. That is the North Texas or the University of North Texas college radio. We also have KTCU, which is the TCU or Tarrant Christian University radio station, which is 88.7. We have KNON, which is a community radio station. It is at 89.3 in the DFW area, and KKXT, which is 91.7. It is a public radio music station. So there's four examples of what I just talked about. So two colleges, one community, and one public broadcasting. So back in the day, they would do music programs. K KXT or KKXT is basically all music now. Our local PBS station KERA ran music and talk programs, and then they went away from a lot of the music and ran mostly talk programs. So they started a second station that ran music. So one is all talk, one is all music. It's the same organization, but it's still public broadcasting. They're fairly new to the game, but KNON, KTCU, and KNTU used to be KUNT, but they changed the call letters smartly. There are also generally these public broadcasting, community radio, or campus radio are given low wattage signals. So they're on the left side of the dial. How that works is your radio dial was from 87 to like 107 in the bandwidth, and that's the hertz that it runs at. Um, these are generally low powered stations, so they are on the left end of the dial. And the reason I say left is because usually it starts from the left and it reads left to right from a lower number to the higher number. So they're generally smaller numbered stations on radio. As far as the internet goes, it doesn't matter. They're all basically the same. But for the purposes of speaking on radio in general, they are generally on the left side of the dial or the low powered region. So the first song we're going to talk about is the Replacements, Left of the Dial. Um, these radio stations produced a very type of music program back in the day. It's a little more structured now, but in the 1980s, they played a little bit of everything. So you could listen to a country song and then a rap song and then an indie, what they call indie radio. It didn't really have a name at that point. We just called it college radio because that's where it played. But it was a very broad tent. And I want to talk about that because this kind of had a big effect on not only my listening experience, but the listening experience of a lot of musicians. So this is where they first heard the things that inspired them to become musicians later on. So we're going to talk about the first one being Left of the Dial by The Replacements. The Replacements were an American rock band formed in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1979. The band was composed of the guitarist and vocalist Paul Westerberg, guitarist Bob Stinson, bass guitarist Tommy Stinson, and drummer Chris Mars for most of its existence. After two albums in the style of punk rock, they became one of the main pioneers of alternative rock or college rock with their acclaimed albums Let It Be and Tim. The song is off of Tim. Um, it is the fourth studio album by The Replacements. It was actually a major label release, but it is still considered a bit an indie album. And it was the last one with Bob Stinson, who was kicked out of the band toward the end of 1986. This was released in 1985. Like its predecessors, Tim achieved moderate mainstream commercial success despite critical acclaim. It ranked fourth in the alternative press of the top 99 albums from 1985 to 1995, along with its previous album, Let It Be. Left of the Dial is a reference to college radio stations, which were usually on the left side of the radio dial. I wanted to include a replacement song, and I thought, well, since we're talking about college radio, it should be Left of the Dial because it actually talks about that. Um, it is a college radio anthem. Uh, it played a lot in college community radio. Rolling Stone ranked it 265 on their 500 greatest songs of all time in 2021. It was ranked 24th Rolling Stone's 2023 list of the 200 best songs of the 1980s. What did you think about Left of the Dial by The Replacements?
Okay. Sorry, had to pause. I was writing a note down.
Yeah,
Um,
that's okay.
we've heard this one before. I mean, you covered the replacements all the way back when. I think the dial was in the very first episode,
Yeah.
most likely. So, I've heard it before. I think it's great for what it is. Just the sound, it sounds hollow to me. Um, but
It's got a very college rock feel, though.
yeah, and maybe that's what I don't like about a lot of these songs is they have that hollow sound, almost like they're not really properly produced, maybe is the way I'm looking at it. I don't know. It's hard to say with that, but I mean, it's the replacements. It's great for what it is. It's not a song for me. I'm not a huge replacement fan. But I know they have some great stuff in here. So it's a fitting song for this list.
The next song in our list is Description of a Fool by Tribe Called Quest. Now, Tribe Called Quest kind of got big in the early to mid 80s as part of a large collective working out of New York City. They were an American hip hop group formed in Queens, New York in 1985, originally composed of rapper and main producer Q-Tip, rapper Phife Dawg, DJ and co-producer Ali Shaheed Muhammad, and rapper Jerobi White. A Tribe Called Quest came to prominence as members of the Native Tongues Collective, where they co-founded in 1988. Widely regarded as pioneers of alternative hip hop and jazz rap, John Bush of AllMusic called them the most intelligent artistic rap group during the 1990s, and Chris X of Pitchfork regarded them as one of the greatest acts of the hip hop as ever produced. The group's debut album, People's Instincts, Travelers, and Paths of Rhythm, earned critical acclaim, receiving the first five mic rating, or five microphones as a rating system back in 1990. I know go. And the source's history. Their jazz infused followed up the low end theory, which was huge, helped shape 1990s alternative hip hop, and was followed by the equally influential Midnight Marauders, in 1993, Beast Rhymes and Life in 1996, and became their first Billboard 200 chart topper. Their fifth album, The Love Movement, in 1998, preceded their breakup. After reuniting in 2006, the sporadic tours, the group released its final album, We Got It From Here, Thank You for Your Service, in 2016, which topped Billboard 200 and earned critical praise. It featured posthumous contributions from Phife Dawg, who died 8 months before its release. They were the most commercially successful act in the native tongues, with all six of their albums certified as gold or platinum. Um, they hired Cool DJ Red Alert as their first manager in early 1989. The group signed a demo deal with Geffen Records and produced a five-song demo, which included the future singles "I Left My Wallet" and "El Segundo." Geffen decided against offering the group a recording contract, and the group was granted permission to shop for a deal elsewhere. After receiving lucrative offers for multi-album deals from a variety of labels. Um, it was known as an independent rap label, Jive Records, partly owned its success to building the careers of artists like Boogie Down Productions and Too Short. Later that year, the group released their first 12-inch single, Description of a Fool. So it was released in 1989, so right at the tail end of the 80s. That is Description of a Fool by a Tribe Called Quest. This is pretty early on in their career. I Left My Wallet. El Segundo is really awesome. They're more well known in the 90s, but they actually were doing some stuff in the late 80s. And this is the stuff that was playing on college radio. Because again, as I said, college radio was a big umbrella back then. Less so now. They still play everything else, but everything's in its own music show. Um, and, to say that there was a community radio station in DFW, KNON, which we mentioned, 89.3. Actually, I think it was further down the dial back then. They were the first radio station to play NWA in America. Um, the name of the the name of the show that was played was Life is Hard. So they played things that were hard, either heavy metal or skate punk or really hardcore rap. And he played um, I don't think it was Boys in the Hood. I think he played their first big single, NWA's first big single, Straight Out of Compton. Thank
Okay,
you.
sure.
Yeah. So, and he played it, but he didn't bleep anything out. So he probably got fired the next day because there was an FCC call. But everybody went nuts, and then that's kind of how they exploded. But it was because this college radio kid played the song because it was quote unquote hard. And the name of his show was Life is Hard. But when they found out, NWA found out he lost his job, they hired him and he was like one of their promoters for a long time. And then he eventually came back to DFW to do radio again. What did you think about Description of a Fool by Tribe Called Quest?
It's got a cool funk groove to
Mhm.
it, but I mean, I'm not a huge rap fan. I'm just
Mhm.
not. You're fine that I'm not going to have a whole lot of really good opinions about rap. I don't. I can appreciate the music and
Mhm.
but it's just I just can't wrap my head around it. There's been some rap I've been okay with over the years. Some of the Beastie Boys, except when they went a little too hardcore. Um, Run DMC, but of course Run DMC kind of became mainstream. And I like some of theirs, but you get into stuff like this, and it's just not me. It's not for me. You're not ever gonna really find a whole lot that I'm gonna dig on, even though you've got rap like Blondie. Blondie had rap. It's just not a genre that I'm a big fan of.
See, I love Tribe Called Quest, and I think it's mostly because they played a lot of jazz. And when I was a kid, I was really into jazz.
Oh yeah, I mean there was definitely a really cool groove funk in this. I dug
Yeah.
that at first, and then it turned into a rap, and I'm like, meh, meh.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a so like I said, this is what was great about this. Instead of them being separate shows, they just be like, okay, we're gonna play this, and then they just play all of this stuff together. I wouldn't be surprised if this playlist that I put together was on a playlist, you know, one evening of college radio being played in the late 80s. The next song is the Plimsouls Right Now. The Plimsouls were an American rock band known for their 1982 hit single "A Million Miles Away," which was featured in the 1983 movie Valley Girl. The band was formed in Paramount, California in 1978. They recorded two full-length albums and an EP and then split up in 1984. Different configurations of the original members have reunited intermittently since. Formed by singer, songwriter, and guitarist Peter Case, who previously fronted the power pop band The Nerves, the Plimsolls began as a trio in 1978, initially named the Tone Dogs, which included Case, bassist Dave Pajoa, and drummer Lou Ramirez. From inception, the band quickly became a crowd favorite in the Los Angeles club scene. Long Beach promoter Steven Zapita signed the group to his Beat Records label for a five-song EP called Zero Hour, which was released in 1980. Guitarist Eddie Munoz joined the group during the recording of the EP, but did not play on it. The band names came from a tweaking of plimsoll, a type of shoe popular in the UK and favored by the Beatles. Danny Holloway produced the Zero Hour EP and managed the group. The song Zero Hour received heavy radio airplay on KROQ-FM, which is the K Rock uh, station in LA, which is a commercial station, but was really big with breaking rock and roll people. Um, so not only, you know, punk and indie music, but also heavy metal music. They were huge, highly influential on all of that stuff. And the Plimsolls grew to be one of the top club draws in the city. Case received critical praise for songwriting. In 1980, Planet Records signed the group, and in February of 1981 released their self-titled debut album, which Holloway also produced. The single "Now" or "Right Now" received strong local airplay in Los Angeles and was covered by Phil Seymour, appearing on the 2011 CD editions of his second album. Seymour also appeared live with Plimsolls during the late 1970s, both as a guitar guest vocalist and an artist on the same bill. Their debut studio album, The Plimsolls, was released in February of 1981. The album reached number 153 on the Billboard album charts. Trouser Press said of the album that it showcased vibrant, hummable tunes as well as the band's affection for 1960s soul. Um, a lot of people were really, really up on Zero Hour, and I like Zero Hour too. But to me, as much as I like uh, the song that they're most famous for, "A Million Miles Away," to me, this is what the Plimsolls are supposed to sound like. And it's called Now, but everybody calls it Right Now because the refrain is right now. It's all right for one night, right now. Anyway, I'm not going to sing it because I destroy it. Peter Case is amazing the way he sings this, and the groove on this song is just really, really, really incredible. It's almost timeless. But I mean, this is one of the things that you would turn on. Again, when I say college radio, I mean all of these different radio sources. This is the kind of stuff you would hear. This is what ended up becoming alternative rock. This is kind of one of the progenitors of that. They didn't have that name for it back then. Back then, they just called it college radio. What do you think about Now by the Plimsolls?
Yeah, once again, why do they all sound like that? That hollow sound. I mean, I guess that was the thing with these, but
It's because everything else in the 80s was overproduced, so a lot of these
mhm.
indie guys didn't want that sound. So they went as far away from it as they could get.
I
That's
guess
why
so,
they're
because I mean, it
kind of
sounds,
hollow because
yeah, it
they didn't
sounds
want to sound like
underproduced.
they didn't want to sound overproduced.
Yeah. Hmm. Um, Overall, I like that song. I really do. That was a good song. Um, but I think these songs would be better if they were better produced. They didn't, they did if they didn't sound like they were filmed in a garage somewhere on a single mic that had, and no EQ and no soundboard and anything like that. But this is a good song. I enjoyed that one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they were trying to get it as close to how they sounded live as possible. And again, there's a lot of, and they even when a lot of these indie bands signed later on with major labels, because a lot of them did, they got a lot of flack from the community for being overproduced like everybody else. Because that was the
Hmm.
thing. Yes, the overproduction or the production is nice, but it became a point in particularly in the 1980s, where everything sounded the same because the production, everything was overproduced. Does that
Hmm.
make sense? Like,
Hmm.
I don't want to say the production value was too high because they topped it. It was too much. It was like it was like a pie in the face every 30 seconds. Pie in the face once every half hour is funny. A pie in the face every 30 seconds is tedious. And that's kind of this sound is kind of a rejection of the tedium of that. Um, the next
Well,
song is an REM song.
call me a reject then.
What?
Call me a reject then.
What? Did I call you a reject?
No, I said call me a reject then because I like that produced
You like that
sound. Yes.
overproduction?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. That's that's why I don't like a lot of hair metal because it's uh, it's overproduced.
I don't know.
If
I
if
I,
if
I
some of that
liked it.
stuff was a little less produced, it would probably be a lot better.
Well, so then we need to find a happy medium here. These guys need to produce themselves a little bit more.
Well, okay, let's check out Driver 8 by REM. Um, and I have a note for this one, which is I cannot stress enough the fucking hold the song had on college radio. REM was big in college radio anyway, but this song, um, as much as their later stuff got hits, you would hear Driver 8 every day on a college radio station. And they didn't have 40 songs they were playing. They had like 4,000, but this song was going to play at some point in that day. Um, REM was an American rock band formed in Athens, Georgia in 1980 by drummer Bill Berry, guitarist Peter Buck, and bassist Mike Mills. Lead vocalist Michael Stipe, who were students at the University of Georgia. REM was noted for Buck's arpeggiated jangle guitar playing, Stipe's distinctive vocal styles, unique stage presence, and cryptic lyrics, Mills' counter melodic bass lines and backing vocals, and Barry's tight, economical drumming. I saw an interview with REM. It's 4 or 5 years old, but Bill Berry point blank looked at Peter Buck and says, "Man, you have still got the busiest right hand in rock and roll because of all the arpeggiated. Because he's really just yeah, up and down picking these these guitar strings, and you can really hear it in like Driver 8." Um, in the early 1990s, other alternative rock acts such as Nirvana, Pixies, and Pavement named REM as a pioneer of the genre. I wouldn't say they were necessarily a pioneer because there were other people doing it a little bit before, i.e., the Plimsouls. But REM definitely brought that southeastern sound, in which we've talked about before. You've got like REM and Pylon and the Connells and Guadalcanal Diary and a lot of these other bands that all had this southeastern America sound. It was like Georgia, North Carolina, this area. Um, the sound was really great, and REM really brought that to the forefront. Um, they released their first single, Radio Free Europe, in 1981 on the independent record label Hibtone. It was followed by the Chronic Town EP in 1982 and their first release on IRS Records, which was their debut album, Murmur. Um, as I've said, REM didn't release an album with a bad song on it for I think we counted it up once. It was like 9 albums where there's not a bad. It may not be your favorite, but the song is quality. This is right in the middle of this one. I think this one was on Reckoning. Driver, it was on Reckoning. It may have been Fables of Reconstruction. It was on one of those two. That's just off the top of my head. But Driver 8 was one of those college radio. They just picked up on it. I mean, yeah, there were some other songs that were more popular than that. But as far as college radio went, Driver 8 was the one that everybody settled on for one reason or another. Um, it wasn't as big of a single, but for some reason it just played heavily on college radio. What did you think about Driver 8 by REM?
REM.
Yeah,
I didn't know the song by name. As soon as it started playing, I heard it. I knew it. I knew it. I have never found a bad REM song. Not any that I know at any rate.
yeah,
Surely there's one out there somewhere.
yeah. It
But
ain't on those first seven albums, I can tell you that.
no, no. And REM to me more defined college radio. I love the REM sound. I love everything they did, and this song is no different. I this great song, love it.
Yeah, yeah. It's well, that's why I wanted to put that in there. This fucking song had a hold of a lot of their catalog had it, especially before Green. A lot of their catalog had a stranglehold on college radio. But it's where that sound comes, that arpeggiated guitar sound comes from. That and Johnny Marr from the Smiths doing it over in England. It also they played a lot too. We'll talk about those at another date. I've got another one of these already noted out. I will probably do a third, but I also need to do another country western one as well. So the upcoming the uh the next song again it's another hip hop song because all the stuff played together. It's "Fight the Power" by Public Enemy. Public Enemy is an American hip hop group formed in Roosevelt, New York in 1985 by Chuck D and Flavor Flav. The group rose to prominence for the political message, including subjects such as American racism and the American media. Their debut album, Yo Bum Rush the Show, was released in 1987 to critical acclaim. Their second album, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, in 1988, was the first hip hop album to top the Village Voices Paz and Jop Critics poll. Their next three albums, Fear of a Black Planet, which this song is off of, which was released in 1990, Apocalypse 91, The Enemy Strikes Black, and Muse Sick and Hour Messages in 1994 were also well received. The group has since released 11 more studio albums, including the soundtracks to the 1998 sports drama film He Got Game, a collaborative album with Paris, Rebirth of Nation. Their most recent album, Black Sky Over the Projects, Apartment 2025, was released in 2025. They went through a whole bunch of lineup changes over the years, with Chuck D and Flavor Flav remaining the only constant members. Co-founder Professor Griff left in 1989, but rejoined in 1998 before parting ways again some years later. DJ Lord also joined Public Enemy in 1998 and replaced the group's original DJ Terminator X in 2020. Um, Public Enemy's first four albums during the 1980s and early 1990s were all certified gold and platinum. But today we're going to talk about Fear of a Black Planet. It's the third studio album by American hip hop group Public Enemy. It was released on April 10th, 1990. It was preceded by um, the single Fight the Power, which is what we're talking about today, which was released in late 1989, which is why I put it in this list. So this song was all over college radio. Um, And it's an 80s song because the very first line of the song is 1989. Um, but it does incorporate various samples and allusions to African American culture, including civil rights exhortations, black church services, and the music of James Brown. Spike Lee also directed a music video, which I've included. It's amazing because you got all this stuff going on, and it's happening on Malcolm X Boulevard. Um, just all this crazy stuff. It reached number one as a hot rap single and number 20 on the hot R&B singles. It was also, I believe, number one on the independent. If it wasn't number, it was in the top. No, it was in the top 10 because we just started the independent music charts in 1988. But it was on the independent music charts in 1989 when it was released. Um, It was ranked number 288 as one of the songs of the century list compiled by the Recording Industry of America, the RIAA. Um, what do you think about Fight the Power by Public Enemy?
It's rap.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah. But it's really good.
I don't like rap. This is gangster rap, and I don't like it.
No, it's not gang. This is not gangster rap. This
Yeah,
is this is political rap.
it sounded like it to me. And I do not like that genre of music. I just don't. I to me there's no redeeming value to it. But that's to me. I know there's a lot of people that will disagree with me on that. I know that Public Enemy has a big following. I understand that. Just not me.
Yeah, well, it's it's a little less safe. Let's just say the Public Enemy is not safe. It's definitely a little dangerous, and I think that's why it was so big on college radio because they were talking about some pretty tough stuff. As
Hmm.
it, um, the next song is "Freak Scene" by Dinosaur Jr. Now, Dinosaur Jr. Got kind of big in the mid '90s, but they were huge in the underground scene before that. Um, Dinosaur Jr. is one of those bands that crossed over with heavy metal and I don't want to say punk, but like indie music because Jay Macias, he's kind of a metal guitar player, right? The guy that runs Dinosaur Jr. So there's a lot of metal sounds involved with it. Um, but it's also kind of indie music. And his voice is not like a traditional heavy metal voice. It's very quiet. A lot of people say it almost sounds like crying, but that's just his voice. It's kind of light and it's kind of quiet, and that's just kind of how he sings. Um, they're an American rock band formed in Amherst, Massachusetts in 1984. The band was founded by Jay Mascis, sorry, guitar, vocals, and he's a primary songwriter. Lou Barlow was bass and vocals, and Murph was the drums. After three albums of independent labels, the band earned a reputation as one of the formative influences on American alternative rock. Creative tensions led to Mascis firing Barlow, who later formed Shubida and Folk Implosion. His replacement, Mike Johnson, came aboard for three major label albums. Murph eventually quit, and Mascis taking over drums on the band's album before the group disbanded in 1997. The original lineup reformed in 2005, releasing five albums thereafter. Maskus' drawling vocals and distinctive guitar sound, harkening back to the 60s and 70s classic rock, and characterized by extensive use of feedback and distortion, i.e., and they're also pretty loud. He plays a flying V, so it's got a very late 70s, early 80s heavy metal sound to it. Um, but he was also really big. He was really heavily influenced by like Nick Drake and stuff like that. So you can kind of hear that in his vocals. And what's amazing about these guys is is how those two things kind of overlap. Maskus and Barlow played together on drums, guitar, respectively, in their hardcore punk band Deep Wounds, formed in 1982, while the pair were attending high school in Western Massachusetts. After high school, they began exploring slower yet still aggressive music like Black Sabbath, The Replacements, and Neil Young. Um, Maskus' college friend Gerald uh, Cosley introduced him to psychedelic influenced pop bands like Dream Syndicate, which Maskus in turn showed to Barlow. Barlow explained, "We love the speed metal and we love the wimpy, jangly stuff." So they took those two things and mixed them together. So you've got speed metal and you got this, what Barlow called wimpy, jangly stuff. Deep Wound broke up in mid 1984, and then they formed uh, what originally was called Dinosaur, and then they realized there was another band called Dinosaur, so they changed their name to Dinosaur Jr. They signed to SST Records, which was mostly a punk record base. It was owned by the members of Black Flag. Um, but they released a whole bunch of stuff like this. This one is from Bug. It's their third studio album for the American alternative rock band Dinosaur Jr. It was released in October of 1988 through SST Records, Blast First, and A Go-Go Records. Um, it was the last album, a Dinosaur Jr. album to with original bassist Lou Barlow until later on. Despite it being a favorite of many Dinosaur Jr. fans, Maskus has said that it's his least favorite Dinosaur Jr. album. The version of Keep the Glove included in the 2005 reissue is not the same as the version of the B-side of Freak Scene single or compilation album Fossils. Freak Scene was written and produced by frontman Jay Mascis. The song was recorded at Fort Apache Studios by engineers Paul Q. Colderine and Sean Slade. Freak Scene was released as a single on SST Records in the United States and was also Dinosaur Jr.'s first release on Blast vs. the United Kingdom. The band also made a music video to promote the single. This was basically their first music video, and in it, um, Barlow gets his head shaved. So there you go. What do you think about Freak Scene by Dinosaur Jr.?
Um, I didn't really like this song, but I will tell you this, the video weirded me out.
It's pretty weird.
That's
Yeah,
a
they're just fucking
very
around in some like it looks like a fort they made out in the woods.
yeah, it was very
Just
weird,
fucking
especially with
around.
the glasses with the weird eyes uh stuck to him or whatnot. That was weird. That was
Yeah.
just weird. No,
But you heard that heavy metal guitar, right? Isn't that amazing that you could put that guitar over like college radio? Because it doesn't seem like it would work, but I like it.
yeah, that's all right. That's all right. It was all right. Not a song for me.
Most people are more familiar with their later commercial thing, Feel the Pain, which blends that a little better, but it is a little more overproduced. Although in the 90s, they were nothing in the 90s was as overproduced as it was in the 80s because a lot of these ideas of maybe we should cut that back a little bit, which is why a lot of even the power ballads and the stuff sound better in the early 90s is because they pulled some of that production back where it wasn't where it wasn't I don't want to say overdone.
Hmm.
They pulled it back, which is why that early 90s stuff usually hits a little better. It's the same with these guys. They added more production until they got basically to that area. Because this does, as you said, it is less overproduced, so it is more hollow because they were on an indie record label. Um, I like Freak Scene. It's one of those ones I really enjoy. The next song is Fade Away by the Bodines. Remember how I said there was like an alternative country sound or an Americana sound as well? This is one of those bands. Bodines is an American rock band from Waukesha, Wisconsin, who came to prominence in the 1980s. The band sound encompasses multiple rock genres, including roots rock, heartland rock, and alternative rock, as well as some country western music. The band's biggest hit to date is Closer to Free, which was used as the theme song to the hit TV series Party of Five, which was fucking huge in the, what, mid 90s? Party of Five, mid 90s? Yeah, something like that. The band has been described as one of the most successful and best known bands to come out of Milwaukee. Bodines is included in a permanent installation of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum in Cleveland, Ohio. Kurt Newman and Sam Giannis met at Waukesha South High School in 1977. After discovering they had similar music interests, they began writing songs together. Giannis entered college and eventually left after Newman convinced him to pursue a music career together. At this time, Newman did not sing much and considered himself to be primarily a drummer, while Giannis had little experience as a guitar player. However, the two decided to get serious about music and both began to sing and play guitar under the name Da Bodines with D.A. Bodines. In April of 1983, the Bodines changed their name and they began playing around Milwaukee. Um, they did recruit Guy Hoffman. He joined the band. He was the drummer. Newman modified his Fender Esquire with two additional pickups intended to capture solid low end frequencies. Um, they became really popular. And in 1985, they were a quartet with the addition of bassist Bob Griffins. Major labels had chosen to sign a contract, uh, or they had chosen to sign a contract with Slash Dash Warner, which, yes, it had a Warner distribution deal, but they were actually recording with an indie label, i.e., Slash Records. After signing, the label suggested that they shorten their name to simply Bodines under the guidance of producer T-Bone Burnett. They entered Hollywood's Sunset Studio Factory in October to record their first album. Sunset Sound Factory also being where I believe where Fleetwood Mac made Rumors, if I'm not mistaken. Either Rumors or Fleetwood Mac. The band later expressed the regret of not being able to spend more time in production, but high studio costs kept the sessions concise. Love and Hope and Sex and Dreams, the band's critical acclaimed debut album, was released in 1986. Um, the song we're talking about is actually on the next album. It is called Not or Fade Away, or I Don't Want to Fade Away. But again, it had more of a, which I believe, tell you right now because I got it right here next to me. Yeah, I think that album's just called The Bodines. Oh no, no, Outside Looking In. I don't think I could show it. Yeah, yeah, it's gonna blend in the background. Oh, there it is. Outside Looking In. Just their faces. So, but that's what Fade Away's on. And it was released in 1986. What did you think about Fade Away by the Bodines?
Um, I was very happy that this didn't have that hollow sound. This actually sounded a little bit more produced, which I appreciate with this because this is a really cool song. I like this one a lot.
This whole album is good. And what's
Yeah.
great is you'll get the two of them singing together or separately, and they're both good singers.
Well, and this is where I'm pointing out. Well, REM did it, and the Bodines
Mhm.
have done it. They can
Yeah,
create this sound with a little more production value
with
behind
a
it.
little more, and I agree with you. Some of these guys, I know why
Oh,
they
sure.
they wanted to be less produced. I get it, I understand, but you, you could put a little bit in. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
you you can mic up the drums a little bit better because that's what they sound like when you play them live. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's okay. You don't it doesn't have to sound like it was recorded in a tin can.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Again,
Yep.
I understand why they did it. I also know that, production can go way over. I would rather it be somewhere in the middle. And I
Mm-hmm.
think you're right. REM pulled it off. The Bodines definitely pulled it off. Now, I will say this. On vinyl, this does sound a little tinny. Um, and it may be because they cleaned it up a little bit, but that's how I like to listen to it because that's how I first listened to the Bodines. So, but they were huge in college radio. They were all over it. It's one of those things that like REM got real big out of college radio. Everybody expected the Bodines and another band out of New Jersey, actually two bands out of New Jersey, to also get really big. That was the Smithereens and Dramarama. Um, the Bodines never got real big. The Smithereens got kind of big, but Dramarama never got big. So it was one of those things we always figured they would, but they didn't. And it's kind of weird that they didn't, but they just for one reason or another didn't. Um, but they were like they were all over college radio. Again, just like that REM song. And I picked this one because this is one of my favorites. But honestly, I could have picked any of them. They did get kind of big with that, several years later with the release of that uh, Party of Five, but which was released on the next album, which came out in like 1990. So, but not enough for them to be a mainstream band like REM was. The next song in the list is "Added Up" by the Violent Femmes. Violent Femmes are an American folk punk band in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. The band consisted of founding members Gordon Gano, Brian Ritchie, and they were joined by multi-instrumentalist Blaze Garza in 2004. The drummer John Sparrow joined in 2005, but originally it was Victor De Lorenzo was their drummer, and he retired. Guy Hoffman played for a little while, and Brian Viglone played for a little while. Now they're um, John Sparrow is kind of their permanent drummer. Um, they're considered to be an integral part of the then underground folk punk scene and alternative rock scenes of the 1980s and remained influential or inspirational to the subsequent movements, particularly on folk rock, indie rock, grunge, pop punk, emo, and the late 1980s and 1990s alternative rock scene. Now, when I was making these notes up, I had just sat down to listen to basically an interview with the three of them. I don't want to say it was like a documentary. They were just talking about the first album. And they gave a breakdown of the entire story on how that album got made. I have it in my little brain here, and I'm about to share it with you. So, um, Victor De Lorenzo and Brian Ritchie were playing music together in the scene in and around Milwaukee. and they kind of stumbled upon this kid, Gordon Gano or Gano. Uh, Gordon Gano was a geek in high school, but he was also a gifted musician. So on the weekends, because he never got invited to go anywhere, he would sit at home and write songs. So he'd have something to do so he wouldn't be bored all weekend. Um, he eventually started going to little coffee shops and stuff and playing songs, which is where Brian Ritchie met up with him. Ritchie, um, when he met Gordon, Gordon was 16 or 17 years old. Brian was like 21. Brian and Gordon met and they started kind of playing music together. And then he introduced him to his friend, Victor De Lorenzo, who was almost 30. So you got like a 16-year-old, a 21-year-old, and like a 28-year-old, right? Which is why Victor De Lorenzo retired in 2013 because he's an old man. Um, this would have been about 1980 when all this was going on. Um, Gordon Gano grew up in his father runs like a church. And he's like the music director, and he's a pastor, and it's like an Episcopalian, I think. Um, they have music, right? Anyway, so he grew up with music, and his mom was a piano player in the church and organ player, and also was a singer and things like this. So he kind of grew up. There was always musical instruments in his house. Well, he met this older guy who was in rock bands and stuff who he really liked. And then he introduced him to the even older guy. Now, Victor De Lorenzo decided that the best way for them to make any money, because what they were playing, um, they couldn't get into any clubs. As a matter of fact, so they would busk on the street. They didn't know the word for it, but they'd just show up with like, one little uh, drum. Oh, what's the one with the not a tom snare? They show up with a little snare drum and like a little, maybe like a little uh, trash can lid on top of a for a cymbal with screws drilled into it, so you get it with brushes, so you get kind of a cool sound. So he was playing this jazz stuff. Brian Ritchie was playing an electric bass, but it was kind of he didn't have so he was just getting the raw bass sound. He didn't have it turned all the gain and stuff turned up on it. And then Gordon Gano was playing an acoustic guitar. Sometimes he would switch between an acoustic and electric. So they would go out and they would busk on the street, depending on whether or not they had power as to whether or not they would go electric or acoustic. They go to this club one night, and Gordon Gano decides he's not going to college. He turns 18 because they're playing around and they're getting serious. So he'd written I think he said like 150 songs. Um, they are playing every song that ends up being on their first two albums anytime they play a club date. So their first two albums are basically done. And these are all songs that he'd written a few years earlier because he wasn't going anywhere. So he had all of these songs together. Um, they go to play this club, which they're supposed to be guaranteed to, there's a deal. They show up with their stuff and they're they're setting up and doing a sound check. The person who runs the club's like, yeah, no, get out. This is not what we want. Here's some money, just leave. So they actually got a little money, but they go and they decide to play on this street corner, right? They're playing on this street corner because there's a Pretender show going on at a theater like down the street from where this club is, right? So the line is they're stuck waiting to buy tickets to get into this Pretender show. So they start busking across the street. They figure this is going to be a big audience for us, right? So they're playing. John Honeymoon Scott of the Pretenders gets done with sound check, goes outside and starts watching him. He goes back inside, gets the rest of the band. They're all sitting across the street from him. Chrissy Hind is sitting on a car laughing because they're playing, Dad, Give Me the Keys, that song. And she thought that was really funny. They get done with whatever little set they're doing, kind of taking a break. She walks up, says, "Hey, you guys want to play a show tonight?" They're like, "Yeah, sure. Where?" She's like, "Right here. You're going to open for us." That was their first big show. After they played that show, somebody in the audience decided they wanted to go ahead and help them make a record. Now they had to get some money. So Victor De Lorenzo goes to his father and gets a loan of, I think it was $4,000. So they go to a local Milwaukee recording studio and they have to go at night because they only have enough money to record this first album. So they figure out what songs they're going to put on the first album. They're all the salacious stuff they've got, and they save their other more folky traditional stuff for their second album because again they've got all of these songs are done, um, and they basically just do a straight recording of it. They record it like it's live on stage, which is why when they play the first album live on stage, it sounds exactly like it does on the radio. They get that sold to Slash Records, and they end up basically Slash puts it out, but they don't give them any money for it. This song goes, I think, quadruple platinum. It took them 20 years to do it because every few years, an older brother gives it to a younger brother or sister, and the kids discover it. And it's because the song Added Up has the word fuck in it. So it's salacious for kids to listen to. That's the story. They eventually pay back Victor De Lorenzo's dad the 5,000 bucks he or 3,000 bucks he loaned them, um, with interest because this song has sold billions of copies. Now it took them forever because again it was an indie release. They recorded it in this studio that was being shut down, so they'd go in and there'd be like a piece of equipment that they were going to use. The next night they'd show up, the equipment wouldn't be there because they were selling it off. Turns out the guy that was producing them was actually the janitor. Having said that, it's a long way to go around. Their first album was an indie masterpiece. Um, it is lo-fi recorded, but it doesn't matter because they're playing it like they play it live, and they're all very gifted musicians. So it's not hollow. And every few years, young people discover the Violent Femmes, and particularly this first album. I've seen them play live a couple of times. They're incredible, and it sounds just as good live as it sounds on the album. And they always start on time. But the song we're talking about is Added Up. What do you think about Added Up?
I hate you.
Why?
So, all right. Let me give everybody the picture here. Zig and I did a lot of time traveling to and from work together, various jobs, blah 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 blah. When Zig gets a song in his head, he will just sit there in the car and sing one tiny segment of the song over and over and over until you want to punch him in the face. This was one of those.
Why I can't get just one kiss?
That's
Why I
it.
can't get it? Just
As
one
soon
kiss.
as I
Baby,
finally, as
I
soon as I
want to
got to
miss
that part in the song, I was like, nope, and moved on.
why I can't
Moved
get
on with my life.
just one
See, he's
screw.
doing he's doing it
Why
now.
I can't get
He's doing it now.
just one
There you go.
screw. Leave me. Yeah,
So I'm
again, the
out.
song says fuck in it, so that's why
I'm
people
out.
love it.
I'm out. Out. Out.
And then they would play it on the indie stations, and depending on how late it was, sometimes it was bleeped, sometimes it wasn't.
No. Out.
You don't like this song?
No. No. Because I had to listen to it over and over and over and over and over. No. 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 No.
I
It's
look
your
at your
fault.
pants and I need a kiss.
It's your fault.
Look
Don't ever say that to me again.
at your pants in it. That's one of the lines of the song. So yeah, every few years, young people will discover this album, and it because of the way they recorded it, because they're a musical history influence band because there's a lot of stuff. There's like old folk songs and there's jazz and there's modern punk rock and there's There's old 1960s uh, drumming cycles and things like that, garage rock. Because of that, this band and this album is kind of timeless because you're not really sure when it was made. So it becomes new every few years when young people discover it. Um, the next song on our list is Punk Rock Girl by the Dead Milkmen. We've discussed the Dead Milkmen before, but we did not get up through Punk Rock Girl.
Mhm.
Uh, They were an American punk rock band formed in 1983 in Philadelphia. Their original lineup consists of vocalist, keyboardist Rodney Linderman, also known as Rodney Anonymous, guitarist and vocalist Joe Gennaro, known as Joe Jack Talcum, and bassist Dave Schultze, known as Dave Blood, and drummer Dean Sabatino, Dean Clean. The band distinguished itself in the hardcore punk scene in the early 1980s through its jangly punk sound and sardonic humor delivered with thick Philadelphia accents. They attracted college radio attention with their 1985 debut album, Big Lizard in My Backyard, with the song Bitchin' Camaro, exclusively touring and further releasing helped the band garner an underground following. The band enjoyed international success on the strength of the Punk Rock Girl, a single from their 1988 Beelzebubba album, which entered into MTV rotation. After an ill-fated stint with major record label Hollywood Records, health problems and industry frustrations in the wake of their success led to the group's breakup in 1995. The group reunited in 2008 with Dan Stevens replacing the deceased Dave Schultze because Dave Schultze passed away. In 2011, they released The King in Yellow, their first studio album in 16 years. The band remained active thereafter, touring sporadically and releasing further records. Beelzebubba is the fourth studio album uh, by the Dead Milkmen. It peaked at number 101 on the Billboard 200. The album contains perhaps the band's best known song, Punk Rock Girl. Five tracks from Beelzebubba. I want the thinnest line. Stewart, Punk Rock Girl, and Smoking Banana Peels and Life is Short were included on the band's 1997 compilation album, Death Rides a Pale Cow, the Ultimate Collection. Um, it was one of the. It was primarily composed by guitarist and vocalist Joe Gennaro and bassist Dave Schulte, though it's credited to all four band members. The idea behind the song was to create a punk rock nursery rhyme. As such, it was a simple love song written from the perspective of a sheltered boy dreaming of a rowdy, delinquent girlfriend. Lyrically, it depicts the duo bonding over record shops and eating pizza. It was recorded in Austin, Texas, even though they're from Philadelphia. It does incorporate an accordion. Beatty helped to emulate the quality of the quartet's original demo by ensuring the guitar solo seemed stifled or imperfect. Punk Rock Girl makes several pop culture references from comedians Minnie Pearl to musician Mojo Nixon and the Beach Boys. Um, it got a lot of play because, again, these guys are real tongue in cheek. Part of punk rock is it's not always serious. A lot of times it's supposed to be funny. These are the guys that are funny. You know, that it's meant to be humorous. You're meant to giggle at it. I would say this is my favorite Dead Milkmen song. My favorite Dead Milkmen song is probably "Watching Scotty Die," also sung done by John Gennaro, by Gennaro. But uh, or Joe Gennaro. I keep calling him John. Um, it's a lot of fun, and this one got real big, which was kind of a shock to all of us because you thought that an indie band was going to make it huge. The Dead Milkmen would have been, number 200 out of a list of 50. But for some reason, this song just grabbed everybody. So yeah, a bunch of the indie kids were shocked. It's like when the Seattle sound took off in the early 90s. Nobody saw that coming. Nobody in the indie scene saw that coming. If you'd have guessed what sound was going to take off, it would have been that Southeast Georgia sound because that's what everybody was listening to. Which it eventually did because Hootie and the Blowfish is out of that Southeast Georgia sound, which also, they got huge too in like 94, 95. But yeah, what do you think about Punk Rock Girl? You and me, we will swim the seven seas, Punk Rock Girl. On Saturday, I met him up to
I have no
Zipper.
words. I have no words.
And she almost hugged me down.
The dead milkmen suffer from the same problem as the Femmes, that last Femmes song did, except it wasn't you. It was somebody I went to high school with who got into
Yeah, but
the
that was
dead
for
milk.
Bitchin' Camaro. This is not Bitchin' Camaro.
It was for Bitch and Camaro, and it was for taking retards to the zoo,
Love that song.
and it very inappropriate. Um, it
Hey, it was
just
a different. 1985 was a different time.
it just falls into the same category. I had to hear the same verses over and over and over. Something
Back to the
completely
airport.
different from you that
Yeah,
ruined what maybe I would have. I can't tell you if I ever would have liked it or not because you two fuckers ruined this shit. Ruined it. Drilled it into my head. You might as well put a drill bit in my ear and slowly pull the trigger.
to the village.
Um, no,
Hot tea.
no,
Listen, no, we only have it
no,
iced.
no. And let me go ahead and preface Fugazi. No. There you
Wait, you
go.
don't like Fugazi? Fugazi's
No.
awesome.
Oh God, no. Yeah, hell no. I hated everything about that one that you're about to talk about, including the video.
Fugazi, Waiting Room.
Yes.
They're an
Yes.
American post-hardcore band formed in Washington, D.C. in 1986. Um, as I said, indie music also had some hardcore stuff. This is actually not hardcore. This is after that, but it
You
is
got to be
definitely a bunch
shitting
of
me.
hardcore guys. No, this is
Really?
not hardcore. This is not hardcore. This is toned down hardcore.
Oh my God.
I'll play some real hardcore for you
No,
sometime.
I'm good. I'm good. No.
Um,
No, no, no.
the band consists of guitarist and vocalist Ian MacKaye and Picciotto, bassist Joe Lally, and drummer Brendan Canty. They were noted for their style transcendent music, DIY ethics stance, manner of business practices, and this is waiting room for Fugazi, by the way. Sorry. They and they have a contempt for the music industry, even though the people who are in Fugazi actually run a Discord Records. Um, they have their own record company. Fugazi performed numerous worldwide tours, have produced 6 studio albums, a film, and comprehensive live series, gaining the band critical acclaim and success around the world. Highly influential on punk and alternative music, the band has been in an indefinite hiatus since 2003. After the hardcore punk group Minor Threat dissolved, Ian MacKaye, vocals and guitar, was active with a few short-lived groups, most notably Embrace. MacKaye released that he wanted to prioritize making music over being in a band because sometimes bands get in the way of music because you're so focused on making a band that you forget what it should be. It should be about the music first. MacKaye had gotten to know Joe Lally, who was working as a roadie for the band Beefeater. After learning Lally played bass, MacKaye asked him if he would be interested in playing together. They soon recruited Dag Nasty drummer Colin Sears. These are all hardcore punk people. And the trio began practicing around August or September of 1986. MacKaye's original concept for Fugazi was akin to MC5, or the MC5 plus reggae. In January of 1987, Sears returned to Dag Nasty and was replaced by Brendan Canty, formerly of Rites of Spring. And one day, Picciotto, Canty's Rites of Spring bandmate, dropped by during a practice session to see how his friend was getting along. He later admitted he secretly harbored the idea of joining the group. Picciotto was disappointed that there seemed to be no place for him. After some uncertainty from Canty, who wanted about what he wanted to do with his future, the trio regrouped and booked their first show at the Wilson Center in early September '87. The group still needed a name, so MacKaye chose the word Fugazi from Mark Baker's Nam, a compilation of stories about Vietnam War veterans. There being a slang acronym for fucked up, got ambushed, zipped in a body bag, Fugazi. It's also like a New York City street term. Fugazi, it's Fugazi, it's Fugazi. It's it's a bastardization of a Sicilian Italian word, but it's something fucked up. They also used it in Vietnam. The band began inviting Picciotto to practices, inspired by the use of a foil in hip hop. Picchiotti sang backup vocals after his band Happy Go Licky broke up. He became more involved with Fugazi. Fugazi embarked on its first tour in January of 1988, and in January of 1988, the band recorded its first EP, Fugazi, with producer Ted Nicely and producer engineer Don Zanetra. They became longtime collaborators. So they eventually released all this stuff on an album called 13 Songs. This was released on that first EP, and the name of that song is Waiting Room. It's often seen as the band's most well-known song, notorious for the attention-getting drop into silence that occurs at the 22-second mark, as well as for its relentless ska, reggae, inflected drive and suggestion of meters meets ruts thrust. So, this song is about someone in a waiting room who's going crazy. But there's also this boo doo 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 doo. There's this reggae beat behind it with the bass. It is really, really cool. And then it gets this driving drum beat, and then it just quits. And then it goes right back into it with this driving drum beat. This is what happened to hardcore. You know, I always said that hardcore sounded the same everywhere, and then different places, because they basically learned how to play their instruments, started going off, and that's how we got indie rock. That's how we got the jungle pop sound, or we got the Seattle sound. It's because they were experimenting with different sounds, because all hardcore sounds the same. This is still a pretty heavy sound, but they incorporated these cool bass lines and these cool drum patterns. It is mostly rhythm driven. It's not really guitar driven, but it's more about the rhythms. But this is Waiting Room by Fugazi, which is their most well known tune. So you're not a fan of Waiting Room?
No.
This is, and again, this is not hardcore punk at all. This is post hardcore.
I hated everything about this song, including the video. I'm sitting there watching the video, and my old man self is like, "Put some goddamn shirts on, idiots."
It was hot.
Whatever, whatever,
But
whatever.
yeah, that
Um,
is it for the list.
well, hold 1 second. Okay, let me see what this is real quick because I'm gonna. Oh my God.
What?
Oh my. Okay. You need to plan a vacation.
Why?
Let's see. What is the 4 day? Huh, $442.
I'm not
Um,
paying $442 to see a show.
well, hold hold that thought for a second. Single day. Why is that one so expensive? What is this one? Lawn chair pass. That says $20.
Where?
Oh, per day. So there's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Price is $20 each day. So Louisville, Kentucky,
Uh-huh.
and let me go. I need to hit back in my browser. I was looking at this for you. Look at me taking care of you. Louisville, Kentucky, September 25th. Violent Femmes with Jet,
Yeah.
The Flaming Lips, The
Uh-huh.
Church, The Devil Makes Three, Casey Musgraves, Maoli, Foster the People of Monsters and Men, Amigo the Devil, Marcus King, Rainbow Girls, Kitchen Dwellers, St. Paul and the Broken Bone, Fireside Collective, Yachtly Crew, Ben Chapman, Angus and Julia Stone, Sawyer Hill, I like Sawyer Hill, Noah Rinker, Gabriella Rose, and Henrik. That's a big festival.
Yeah. What's
Called
it called?
Bourbon and Beyond 2026. It's 2026. It's in Louisville, Kentucky. You should look that up because Violent Femmes are playing there.
I did. They do put on a good show. And
Well,
again,
there you go.
they always start on time. Don't get
Yeah,
there late because you'll miss them.
and there you go. Louisville, Kentucky. Take you a little vacation.
That
Don't
sounds awesome.
don't say I never did anything for you.
That's about it for the list, other than we're gonna have another one coming up. Because it was like I had like 20 songs, and I'm like, yeah, I need to divide this into two more. And I may do another one, when I think about some of the stuff that we need to get a little more alternative country in there, like some Uncle Tupelo and stuff like that. Because I didn't go into the depth. But that's the thing. This music genre, or I don't say it's really a genre. It's college radio eventually became its own music genre, but it was only one small sliver of what we're talking about.
Hmm.
Community radio was just open and it was stuff that you didn't hear anywhere else. To this day, you're not going to hear a lot of this stuff anyplace else.
And
You'll you'll
for good
hear from
reason.
the same bands, but it'll be later stuff. It won't be this.
Yeah, there's good reason why you're not going to hear a lot of it because it sucks. My
You're a
opinion,
fan of
I'm
Motley
entitled to it.
Crue.
I know.
Your opinion matters less because of that. I'm just gonna say
To
it.
to you, but there's a lot of people who are on my side. Just like I know there's a lot of people on the punk side that appreciate that stuff. I am not one of them.
Yeah,
There are because I mean, put us in a room with Michael Shanks, and he's going to severely disagree with you on hairbands. You know
yeah.
that
Well,
because we've been
I
there.
mean, he's entitled to a wrong opinion.
There's a lot of people who still, who still to this day. I mean, there is a reason that 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 rock show a few years ago with Motley Crue and Poison and Joan Jett and Europe and Def Leppard. There's a reason it was selling out nationwide because people love that music.
Yeah. Well,
So,
that's it. Actually, it was getting to the point of saying the thing I like best about this is you get a little bit of all of that. You get a little bit of everything in this list. I, College radio of the 80s played something for everybody.
mhm.
And this is a pretty broad spectrum. If you'll notice in the second one as well, I do play a lot of the indie stuff, but that's because this is the only place you could hear it back then. And you couldn't even hear it all day. You could only get, and the reason I harp on stuff like Motley Crue and stuff like that, those guys were on the radio all the time.
Oh,
If I
sure,
wanted to listen to
sure,
this, I got an hour a week.
sure, sure, and that's just that
And
that's just
I think that's wrong. I think it should be open.
well,
But
but
I'm also
but
not making $100 million off of
th
record sales
thank you.
either.
Thank you. And that's kind of where the point is there is the reason you got them over and over and over again because they were selling.
Well, they were
Um,
selling because they were being pushed too.
sure, sure, but they're going to keep playing them because the radio stations they
Un-
play those
until they
top
weren't.
hits until they weren't.
Until the entire country went, man, this stuff sucks. We're gonna listen to Nirvana now.
The entire country did not say this stuff sucks. There was a whole new sound. But while they were in their heyday, having them on the radio got the radio station listeners. The more listeners they had, potentially the more advertisement they could sell, potentially the more blah, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
but I mean, having them on the radio because the record companies decided that they wanted to play hair metal, and so they would give the radio stations this single with some money in it, and then because a bunch of them got busted for it.
Oh, sure, sure, it
There was a
happened.
lot
But
of payola going on. It's like, oh my God, you couldn't put. Well, you know why? Because the little indie record labels didn't have the money to give to the radio
right,
stations all over the
right,
country.
and we know that happened. But it doesn't change the fact that you had let's take DFW for example.
Hmm.
You had X number of pop stations, you had X number of classic rock stations, you had X number of country stations, you
Yeah,
had X number of adult contemporary. Pop stations in the 80's were pretty prevalent.
yeah,
Um,
and what
and
and,
and
and
they
there
and
was
they
there was a change at a period because in say 1982, pop stations played, which is why I like these college stations. In like 1982 and 1983, pop stations played everything,
they
and
did.
then they got narrowed down in the late 80's, and I
They
think
did.
that was to our detriment.
I would say I would disagree with you, and I would say that started more in the mid 80's
You think it was the
because
mid 80's? Okay.
sure, sure, because I've talked about this on the show before. If there was a hit song you liked, the maximum amount of time you were going to have to wait was 2 hours,
Yeah.
maximum, because
And
you're
that
going to
wasn't the
hear that.
case in 1982.
No, it wasn't the case in 82. It became that. And again, because they were getting listeners. People would listen over and over and over because they wanted to hear their songs, or they wanted to be able to be by their recorder to bootleg their songs, as a lot
Yeah.
of us did, and make
Guilty.
mixtapes and crap like that. Oh, so was I. Um, but that sold. That sold advertisers because the radio station could go to those advertisers and say, during this 2 hour block, we're going to be playing these songs that are going to get you X blah 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 of people who may be interested in your product, people who will spend money, or people who were able to influence people to spend money, like kids to their parents, blah blah blah. And that's where that happened. It's not saying the songs were bad. There's a lot of them that were overplayed, and I got tired of listening to because they overplayed them and overplayed them and overplayed them. Um, and it was especially true if it was a top 10 song on the Billboard Top 100. It was especially true for that. And it would just go time and time and time
Yeah,
again.
if I never hear "Living on a Prayer" by Bon Jovi again, it will be too soon
Right. And
because
there's
I've
people,
heard that song too many times in my
and
life.
yes, there's people that think that. Now, I'm going to throw this back in your face now. That's how I feel when you sing one of these songs 1,000
It's
times in one car ride.
not my
You
fault it's stuck in my head.
you pop stationed me on a song. So there, you're just as guilty. Um,
Well,
anyway,
and what's really sad is it wasn't even a whole song. It was just
no, I know. That's what I said. It was one tiny little segment. Sometimes it was one line. Drove me
it would
crazy.
be repeating in my head for
Yeah,
days.
yeah. Well, you have now explained the pop movement in your own head.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. Um, get out there, listen to these songs. I know there are people out there that like these songs, and they're gonna severely disagree with me, and that's cool. Just go listen to them, see what you think about them. I know we've got another one of these that we'll be doing in a few
Yeah.
weeks.
Sometimes we rib each other
Um,
about this music just because it's funny, too, by the way. Yeah,
yeah,
he and I.
but I do hate pop music or punk music, so that's not false. But
Yeah.
anyway, bygones. And I don't like rap, so
But you like
uh,
punkabilly.
I do like punkabilly. Punkabilly is some good stuff. I like goth. Strangely enough, I
Yeah.
didn't even realize. So anyway, so go out there and listen to it. Appreciate the list. With that, we will step over to the murdery side of the house.
Murder.
All right, so today I got my information off the FBI website, Indiana State Police, Chicago Tribune, the New York Times, Associated Press Archives, the Indianapolis Star, Murderpedia, and Find a Grave. And this is the story of Larry Eyler.
Larry Eyler.
So sometimes you've got cases where fear builds slowly. There's a disappearance here 1 week later, and this is where patterns sometimes take time to come into focus. We've talked about this in several of these. And then there are cases where the pattern is only visible when you really step back and look at the map because all the victims are not in one place. They're scattered. We've talked about several of those as well. When you have different towns, counties, and sometimes even different states. And at first, not everything seems to be connected until someone says, hey, wait a minute, we got something here. In the early 1980s, there were bodies that began turning up across the Midwest. They were found along highways and in rural areas and places, honestly, someone might pass by but never stop. The victims were young men. Most of them had been traveling. Some were last seen hitchhiking, and some just disappeared without an explanation. And for a very long time, these cases were all investigated separately. How many times have we talked about this? Different jurisdictions, different investigators, different pieces of puzzle no one could fully see. But once all the puzzle pieces started coming together, the picture was very disturbing because this was not one isolated crime, and it was a pattern that actually stretched across state lines. And it was a killer who was using the road itself as part of the method. It was a moving method, it was blending in, and victims were being left in places where they may not be found for days. And by the time investigators really kind of understood what they were dealing with, there were too many victims. So today our journey is going to take us to Illinois, but it's not going to stay there. This is the story of Larry Eyler, as I said earlier, and the trail of murders that earned him the nickname the Highway Killer. Uh, Before we get into the case, quick reminder of where we are in our journey. This is part of our A to Z Walk Across America serial killer. I go state by state, case by case. We moved from Alaska all the way through Idaho, and now we're going to stop in Illinois, but it's not going to stay there. Um, in the early 80s, law enforcement agencies across the Midwest started seeing a very troubling pattern. There were bodies being found, not in cities, not in homes, but again, along roads. They were rural highways, they were ditches, they were fields just off a shoulder. And and again, it's a place someone might just drive past and never stop, never notice anything unusual. But when the bodies were discovered, they all had something in common. As I had said, they were young men who had been traveling or hitchhiking. And at first, the cases were investigated the way these investigators do. They were handled locally. We saw a lot of this in the 80's and the 70's and before the 90's. Each department working its own case and each investigator trying to solve what happened on a single crime. But that's kind of where the problem was because the victims were not all from the same town or even the same state. Some bodies were found in Illinois, some in Indiana, some in Wisconsin, different jurisdictions, different timelines. And there was no central system that connected everything together, not like we do today. And this is how something very dangerous happened. This was a killer that was moving across states and leaving victims behind. And because everything was so spread out, there was not a single agency that could see the entire picture. And this would take a lot of time before investigators really realized what they were dealing with. And the question really kind of came out, how do you stop somebody who uses the highway as part of their crime? Um, and that's when investigators kind of start to notice additional similarities. Um, the fact that they were young men who were hitchhiking or traveling made them more vulnerable, and their disappearances were not connected to the large picture, but it was becoming impossible for investigators to ignore because people were talking. It was also the fact that these were not random acts of violence. This was obviously somebody who was targeting a specific type of victim. It was someone who knew how to approach them, how to gain their trust, and then make them disappear. So that's when investigators started sharing information across state lines. They were hearing things, and now they're comparing reports and matching timelines, and they were looking for anything that would connect the cases. And this is where the picture started to form that they were looking at a single individual. Go ahead.
Now, I was just I was looking at a map and I realized that it's only like 70 miles from Wisconsin down through Illinois into Indiana.
Yeah,
I, I it's because of where I'm from. I did that doesn't track for me. That's 70 miles. That's that's the city I live in.
right. But no, no, up north like that, you can cross state lines easily within a 70-mile period.
Yeah. It looks like
Um,
Chicago just spills into Indiana. I did not know that until
yeah.
just now. I'm
Oh yeah.
sorry. I
Yeah, yeah.
didn't mean to distract you or derail you, but it's
Mm-mm.
just like, what?
No, and you bring up a good point. It's just they were so close together, but they're not. They weren't talking to each other, but they ended up
Yeah.
being forced to because this was, as I said, a single individual who was moving between states, and whoever it was using the road as both their tool and a means for escape. And once that realization set in, that's really when everything changed because they now knew they were not looking for such separate suspects. It was one man. And this is the man who would eventually be identified as Larry Eyler. Um, Once the investigators started connecting these cases, the focus very quickly shifted. They started seeing a pattern, and somewhere in that pattern was someone who was moving between Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin without drawing attention to themselves. The challenge was figuring out who, but as the investigators compared the reports, one detail kept coming up that witnesses in different areas described a man with some of the victims before they had disappeared. It was someone who was driving, who offered rides, and did not immediately seem dangerous. And that trail led investigators to Larry Eyler. Larry Eyler was a house painter who lived in Illinois, but he traveled frequently for work, which meant something very important to the case. He had a reason to be out on the road and a reason to move between towns in multiple states without raising any suspicion whatsoever. And that made him someone that investigators needed to look at very closely. In 1983, his name became more than just a person of interest. He was arrested after being seen with a young man named Daniel Bridges, who would later be identified as one of the victims. Daniel Bridges was last seen getting into Eiler's truck. And when police stopped Larry Eyler, they had a potential connection to a victim and a suspect and an opportunity to stop the killer. But there was a problem. They didn't have enough evidence to hold him. So they had suspicions, but it was all circumstantial. And so Larry Eyler would be released. And that's really kind of where, you get one of the most frustrating turning points in any case because investigators, unfortunately, would later realize just how close they had come to stopping him. Because after he released, the killings didn't stop. More bodies were found and more young men were disappearing. But now investigators knew they had something they hadn't before. They had likely already encountered the killer and let him go. This is where everything changed in the course of the investigation because it wasn't now about finding a suspect, but it was about correcting their mistake. Um, Law enforcement agencies began working more closely than ever before, and witness statements were examined by multiple departments. Victim timelines were compared in greater detail, and slowly this case began to grow. Investigators began looking at his movements and tracked where he had been working and compared those to the victims where they had been last seen or discovered. And that's when everything really started to become clear because Larry Eyler had been in all the right places at all the right times over and over and over again. Um, so as the evidence kind of kept growing, investigators they prepared to act again, but they wanted to be certain this time. They knew they had already lost one opportunity, and they couldn't afford to lose another. Larry Eyler was still out there and moving and blending in everyday life, but the difference now is investigators were no longer looking for a shadow. They now had a name and a face, and they were getting closer to proving what they believed that Larry Eyler was responsible for a series of murders stretching across multiple states. And they finally they thought they were finally close to catching the highway killer. And they were determined they weren't going to repeat the earlier mistake, of letting him walk. They weren't going to let this happen again. So in 1984, he was arrested and charged in connection with one of the murders, but this time the case was much stronger. They had witness statements and his movements and that growing pattern that tied him to multiple victims. But even at that point, the full scope of what he had done had not yet been known. So he went to trial in Illinois for the murder of Daniel Bridges, and the prosecutors presented their case and they laid out the timeline that connected Eyler to Daniel Bridges. And they argued that this was not an isolated act, but part of a larger pattern. But the defense pushed back, challenging the evidence, challenging all the evidence, and trying to create doubt. The jury, however, they were convinced, and they did find Eyler guilty and sentenced him to life in prison. At that point, the legal system had done its job. They identified the killer to a single person, and the conviction was secured. But that's not where the story ended, and it's really not even close, because investigators continued looking at the broader pattern of the murders. Another name now entered the picture, and this was Robert Little. Robert Little was a college professor who had a relationship with Larry Eyler, and over time, evidence began to suggest that he had been involved in some of the crimes. The exact nature of which had been debated for a while. Some believed that Robert Little played a direct role. Others believed it was more limited. But what was very clear is that his connection to Larry Eyler added another layer to this very disturbing case. For many, many years, many of the murders connected to the highway killer remained unsolved. Investigators suspected Larry Eyler was responsible for far more victims than he had been convicted of, but without a confession, the cases remained open. In 1994, that changed because Larry Eyler was dying. He had developed complications related to AIDS, and as his health declined, he made a decision. He confessed. Through his attorney, Larry Eyler admitted to the murders of multiple victims across Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin. And in total, he was linked to at least 20 murders and possibly more. Um, for families, this was the first time they had any answers, names and details and confirmation that it happened to their loved one. But for, others, it just honestly, it came too late, because Larry Eyler died shortly after his confession. He died on March 6, 1994, while serving his life sentence. So he never got to face trial for most of the murders he confessed to. And because of that, there's a lot of questions about the case that remain, the full extent of his crimes and the exact role of his accomplice. There's questions on whether there were additional victims that were never identified. But what we do know is for years he used the highways of the Midwest to find his victims and move between states and avoid detection. And he left behind a trail of violence that took entirely far too long to understand. And that was the problem with the early days of investigations of things like this. They just couldn't connect these things. They didn't have the type of communication and access to shared information that we do today. We talk today about the benefit and the boon of the information we can get at our fingertips today. But as far as crime goes, that has benefited us because we're able to connect a lot of these things a lot earlier. Um, Unfortunately, on this one, by the time everything really came into focus, there were at least dozens of lives that had been lost. And it's just a reminder how difficult it can be to track a killer who doesn't stay in one place. Israel Keys was this way. He traveled across the nation doing what he did. For years on this, victims were found across multiple states. Um, and and unfortunately, in that time, so many lives were lost. He targeted the young men who were traveling or hitchhiking. He used their vulnerability and he used the road. And for a very, very long time, it just allowed him to avoid detection. Even after he was first questioned and first arrested, because they didn't have that coordination. And it took the coordination of multiple agencies before they even had a second chance to bring him into custody for good. And during that time, there were more victims that happened. Um, and this is just kind of one of those cases that don't end cleanly. Not when
Mhm.
the crimes stretch across state or when the number of victims are in a dozen, and especially when the full story only comes out at the very, very end. The only thing clear is that Larry Eyler moved through the Midwest for years and used the highways as his hunting ground. Um, by the time everything was understood, too many lives were taken, and it's a sad state that we didn't we didn't learn to start coordinating between agencies sooner. North Fox Island was this way. The murders of the children in Detroit or outside of Detroit was
Yeah,
that way
yeah,
as
where it was
well.
like a summer camp that they just basically.
Well, that and the kids were being found around the city, and
Mhm.
departments in that metropolitan area were not even talking to each other, and that's
Nope.
that's where things like this occur and grow, and it's very, very sad. But that's the story of Larry Eyler, the highway killer. There's more sensational ones that have happened in Illinois, but I've covered them. So this one was kind of a little outlier there. But that will close our stop in Illinois. Our A to Z journey will be continuing. Next time, we will stay right in the heart of the Midwest, and our next stop is in Indiana.
Indiana. I would, yeah, when you first said Indiana, I was like, oh, is he doing Illinois and Indiana?
No, no.
No.
Indiana will be a whole different one. I've got one for that already. So anyway, thanks for sitting through me on that. That will take us to the end of another week of Nerdery and Murdery. As always, you can find us at nerdymurdery.com, our website, our hub, where you'll find more about us, and you'll find the various links that we have out there, including the link to our YouTube page, which Zig so often updates.
Yeah, definitely check this one out. As Jeffrey said, the best way to watch these is to go to the YouTube playlist, start the episode, pause it, and go up and listen to the song, and then it makes more sense when you listen to it that way.
Or I will give you a counter argument, or be like me and don't listen to it. So, bygones.
Don't do that. Don't do that because it won't make any sense if you don't listen to it.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense to me listening to it. So, Anyway, I give Zig shit. I give Zig shit for his shitty taste in music sometimes. Um, did I say that quietly enough?
No, no, you did
No.
not.
Damn. Damn. Sucks to be me. All right. You will also find the link to our Patreon account if you wish to become a patron and help the costs that are associated with this show. Our patrons, along with our merchandise, which you'll also find the link for, help with our storage, with our uploads, our website. There are costs that are associated with this show. It's not cheap, it's not free. And whether you're a patron or whether you're going out there and you're sporting our merchandise and giving us some free advertisement out there, let's just go ahead and say this: you look damn good in it,
Damn good.
damn good. Something you can do for free though is you can leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It helps us and helps others find our content that may be looking for the information we discuss. And last but certainly not least, as always, to our good friend Chuck, you can go sleep now.
Good night, Chuck.
Good night, Chuck. With that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Jerk here with the murdery.
Cue the music.